Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and finally the chip strategy video that I've been working on for a really long time now is here. There's going to be lots of content in today's video. We're going to talk about the assistant manager chip in detail. We're also going to talk about the overall landscape for FPL moving forward in terms of predicted fixtures, predicted doubles and blanks, and also permutations of chip strategies, and also one that I myself am leaning towards. So if you guys do enjoy today's video and find some use in it, please do drop a like, please do subscribe as well. A lot of time and effort went into today's video, so I really appreciate it if you could just take a second or two to just scroll down a little bit and hit the subscribe button. Alright, so let's start off today's video with the assistant manager chip. Now, the reason why I think it's important to discuss this chip in detail right now, even though we're only in Game Week 23, is because a lot of people are looking to load up on Liverpool assets right now, and it does make sense because starting with Ipswich at home now in Game Week 23, they go on a very good run of fixtures, the double in Game Week 24 of course, and then in Game Week 25 it's Wolves as well. So it does make sense. But then you have to think about when you want to use the assistant manager chip. If you do use it in Game Week 24, double Game Week 24 that is, then you will have to cater an extra slot for Arne slot. Now, no pun intended, but basically you get what I'm trying to say. If you do want to use the assistant manager chip on a Liverpool manager, you will have to give one Liverpool spot to him, which essentially means you can only have two Liverpool outfielders. And so that would impact your transfers now in Game Week 23. Maybe you don't go so far as to bring in three Liverpool players. Maybe you keep it at two if you already have, say for example, Salah and Trent. Or if you only have Salah, you bring in Trent and you don't bring in an extra Liverpool player like Gakpo or Diaz, for example. You save that position. Save that third Liverpool position for Arne slot in Game Week 24. So that's why it's important to just look at the assistant manager chip right now and think when you want to use it. The main windows, I would say, is double Game Week 24, single Game Week 31, or double Game Week 36. Now, I explain why I think these are the main windows. I think double Game Week 24, it's the most obvious one as to why it makes sense to use it. It's mainly because it starts to be available to us in Game Week 24, and just as well, there's a double game week for Liverpool as well. And then the fixtures in Game Week 25 and Game Week 26, you'll likely try to use them to kind of target table bonus teams. If not, you could very well just go ahead and keep an Arne slot if you just want to go the safe route, right? So that's double Game Week 24 and using the assistant manager chip. Then I'll elaborate more on the points that we have on screen in a little bit. But as for the other windows that you can use the assistant manager chip, there's also single Game Week 31 and double Game Week 36. Now, the reason why single Game Week 31 makes sense is because there's a 3 game week period for the assistant manager chip. So if you activate it in Game Week 31, you get to have it until Game Week 33, which happens to also be a double game week as well. So basically, you have 2 single game weeks, Game Week 31 and 32, where you would likely target table bonus teams, and then you would have the double in 33. The reason why it wouldn't make sense to use it in Game Week 32 or Game Week 33 itself, which is the double, is mainly because of Game Week 34. That will be the biggest blank game week that we will have in FPL this season, mainly because of the FA Cup games. So Game Week 34 is a game week that likely will be navigated with a chip, potentially a free hit chip. So you want to be able to use chips to navigate Game Week 34, in which case you cannot have the assistant manager chip activated during that period. So that's why Game Week 31 makes the most sense in terms of the later game weeks. And then in terms of the last window, there's double Game Week 36 itself, where it will be a double, and then in Game Week 37 and Game Week 38, it will be single game weeks where you can potentially target table bonus teams that are likely to be on the beach, and we'll speak about that later on as well. So as you guys can see, there are 3 main windows, and let's firstly cover the earliest window right in front of us very soon, double game week 24. Now, for double game week 24, there are a couple of good things, right, about using the chip early, getting it out of the way. And it's simply that future wildcards do not need to factor in saving money to buy a manager. Now, I think this is really important because when you wildcard later down the line, it is very likely that you're using the wildcard to set up for your bench boost as well, in which case, as you're wildcarding, you're spreading the funds all around your team. Even your bench is going to be rather expensive because you're setting up for the bench boost. That basically means that money is tight, right? You don't have a lot of budget. And if you still have to save 1.5 million in the bank so that you can buy an assistant manager later down the line when you activate it, then essentially you're just really strapped for cash, right? So if you get rid of the chip now in game week 24, later down the line when you wildcard, whether it is in game week 30, whether it's in game week 35, you do not have to save that extra 1.5 million. Now, I'm going to assume that it's 1.5 million, and I'm going off this assumption because my expectation is that as your assistant manager chip is active, there will at least be one out of those 3 game weeks that you would want a assistant manager that is 1.5 million, and it's likely going to be the double. Say for example, now in double game week 24, you're likely going to want Arne slot at 1.5 million. After that, you could look to sell to, whoever you want. Maybe David Moyes, for example, if you want to go for an Everton manager. But basically, there will at least be one out of those 3 game weeks that you will want a 1.5 million manager. So if you're on a wildcard later down the line and you have to take 1.5 million out of your budget to save for the assistant manager chip, essentially on your wildcard, there's the difference between, going for a Morgan Gibbs-White versus, Mbumo, or Eze versus Mbumo. Like, I know Morgan Gibbs-White and Eze are good players in their own rights. As FPL assets, they're also pretty decent. But I think we have to agree that Mbumo is the better asset when it compares to, someone like Morgan Gibbs-White or Eze. But potentially, this is one of the sacrifices that you may have to make on a wild card because you have to save that extra 1.5 million, right? So essentially, getting the chip out of the way just saves you that trouble. Later down the line when you wildcard, you can focus all your money on your 15 players and you don't have to save for the assistant manager. Now, aside from that, in double game week 24, it is hard to predict the expected minutes for the third Liverpool asset. Now, in terms of the first 2 that I think are pretty secure, firstly, it's Salah. I think Trent is also the next best Liverpool asset to have. So in terms of the third Liverpool asset, it's a struggle right now to predict the minutes for players like Gakpo, Diaz, Darwin Núñez, for example. So one of the ways to steer clear of all these assets, but still triple up on Liverpool, is just to go for Arne slot as your third Liverpool asset, right? The assistant manager chip in game week 24, activating it and going for slot solves this problem for you, right? So that's not a good thing about using it in game week 24. Aside from that, there's also the slight possibility of a double game week 25 for Spurs and Fulham. Now, this is only a very slight possibility. Basically, the condition for Spurs and Fulham to double is Tottenham must win Liverpool overall in the EFL Cup and progress to the finals. So they have a 1-0 lead right now, as I've said. And secondly, Tottenham also have to be in the top 8 of the Europa League. Now, that is likely to happen because looking at the fixtures moving forward for that competition, you would back them to kind of get into the top 8. I think what's more unlikely is them holding that 1-0 lead against Liverpool because that game will be at Anfield. So, but the bookies right now and the market odds basically have it that Liverpool will overturn the deficit, and basically that would mean that Tottenham and Fulham would no longer double in game week 25, and it's only a small possibility, but if it happens, it would likely only be confirmed after the double game week 24 deadline. This is confirmed as per Ben Krellin on Twitter, so obviously do go and give him a follow. This is the crunch time, so doubles and blanks coming up right now. He is the guy to go to. And I do think he also mentioned, if I'm not wrong, there will be a provisional announcement if it does happen, right? If Tottenham and Fulham do double in 25, there might be a provisional announcement before the double game week 24 deadline. And if that is the case, then I'm pretty sure everyone is going to go all out and activate the assistant manager chip because essentially you have it for 2 doubles, 24 and 25. But for the time being, this double in 25 is not confirmed. The only one that's confirmed is double game week 24 for Liverpool and Everton, right? right? So that's it for kind of the benefits of using it early and getting it out of the way. Now, in terms of using it later down the line, as I've said just now, 31 or double game week 36 is also reasonable windows to activate the assistant manager chip. Firstly, you get the confirmation of the full schedule and predicted doubles later down the line. So with all this in mind, I think it just gives you a clearer picture as to when you potentially want to when you want to use the assistant manager chip, whether it's in 31 or 36. You can plan all your chips around very nicely with full information. So that's one. Secondly, I think this is the main benefit that a lot of people are trying to go for in terms of activating the assistant manager chip later down the line, and that is that potentially some teams may be on the beach. And basically what this means is that they don't have anything to play for anymore. Maybe getting a win, for example, in that game will not affect their table position. And this is likely to be in the later game weeks, potentially 37 and 38, where maybe the league is done. Maybe Liverpool has already won the league and they might field a slightly weaker team for the Premier League, save up their first team players for the Champions League, for example. Or it could also be that, mid-table teams are in a position where whether they win or lose, it doesn't affect their position, and they could also feel a weaker team, in which case it might be better to target table bonus in those game weeks. So more on table bonus later on, because there's a lot to expand on table bonus. So the next, maybe 5 to 6 minutes will be on table bonus. But just as a last pointer here, saving the assistant manager chip for game week 31 or 36 essentially means that now in double game week 24, you can use your triple captain. So I do think that the strategy for a lot of people still with your triple captainship is probably to triple captain Mo Salah in game week 24. And that essentially means that you can't use your assistant manager chip. You can't have two chips active. And that just, puts you in a situation where you're just in that bracket of players who will be using the assistant manager chip in 31 and 36 instead. So that's my overall thoughts on the assistant manager chip. And just to end off, I do think if you want to use the assistant manager chip on slot, it will either be double game week 24 that you have it on him, or game week 31. The reason I say this is because Liverpool will definitely play Arsenal as part of their double in game week 36 if they do double. The fixture that is currently on the fixture calendar for Liverpool in game week 36 is Arsenal. So I don't imagine that you would want to use it on Arne's slot with Arsenal as one of those fixtures. So if you want to play an Arne slot, I do think it's either going to be now in double game week 24 or in game week 31, just as a caveat, right? So there we go in terms of this section. Hopefully it was helpful for you guys. And now I want to expand a little bit on table bonus. So the reason why I wanted to expand on table bonus is because this is the highest ceiling chip, right? Basically, if you target table bonus well, you essentially can get a lot of points from the assistant manager chip. But I also do want to bring us back to reality, and that is that it is very difficult to target table bonus. We are essentially taking a calculated gamble on an underdog. And there's a reason why it's worth so many points, because we are backing the underdog, right? So what Rob T FPL has done, and basically please do go and give him a follow on Twitter. He is an incredible data analyst, and he uses the market odds, etc., to give us visualizations that we can use to navigate the FPL landscape. So please do go and drop him a follow. This chart is from him. And what he's done is that he's taken a look at all the table bonus eligible games. So basically, the games where the teams involved are separated by at least 5 positions on the league table. And what he's done is he's gone all the way back to 2016 and looked all the way till now, 2024. And the game week period that he's analyzed as well, among all these different years that he's looked at, is game week 24 to game week 38. So what he's done is basically looked at the pre-match market odds of winning, and these are percentages that are slightly lower than usual because we're backing the underdog here. And what he's done is he's calculated if we use the assistant manager chip in these game weeks, what is the average? So you see, it makes sense that if the pre-match market odds of winning is really low, 0 to 10, you're essentially backing a really big underdog. It's pretty much essentially betting for Liverpool to lose to Southampton, for example, right? So in that situation, if you back Southampton, likely you're going to lose to Liverpool, in which case the score that you'll get for your assistant manager chip is pretty low. You look at the mean, it's 2.8, the median is 1.0. So it's a similar story for 10 to 20%, similar story for 20 to 30 as well. Maybe the mean is slightly higher than percentages that are slightly lower. But when you look at the 30 plus odds in terms of pre-match winning percentages, if the underdog is at least a 30% favorite, then the mean and the median are very similar. It's 10.4 for the mean and 10 for the median. So essentially, what we can draw from this is that if the underdog is at least 30% a favorite to win, you have a pretty decent chance of turning that into a win for the underdog and basically getting your table bonus for the assistant manager chip. And that could be huge, right? That's a lot of points, because if the underdog wins, you get an extra bonus 10 points for the win. That's 16 points already based on the win. You're not counting clean sheets. If that happens, you're also not counting goals. So this is where I think a lot of people are getting excited for the table bonus, but I think we need to, again, go back to reality and realize that it is difficult to target, but still, with kind of the analyzed data that we have from Rob T FPL, I'm going to use these percentages to kind of analyze the future game weeks and see when I think in the different windows that we're likely to target table bonus teams, when are the best chances for us. So let's now have a look at the first window, which is activating the assistant manager chip in double game week 24, which would then leave game week 25 and game week 26 as your table bonus weeks, and analyze those two fixtures and see the percentages for the underdogs. So what I have on screen right now, on the extreme left, is the league table as of recording. Now, I am recording this before the Chelsea versus Wolves game of game week 22. So that is the last game of game week 22. That could obviously bring huge changes to the table, because if Chelsea win, you see that they immediately shoot up past Newcastle and past Man City into fourth, right? So again, as we're analyzing these fixtures right now, the league table could look quite different as to how it looks now, but based off of what we have and how it looks right now, we can form a couple of predictions and hope that the league table doesn't change too much, such that we can target these fixtures that we're going to look at for 25 and 26, right? So again, this league table, by the time you're watching this, maybe it's slightly different, but you get the idea of what we're trying to say. So for game week 25, I essentially see three key fixtures that we can use to target table bonus. So first one is the early kickoff of game week 25. And basically, when I look at the data for market odds, I've put the percentages there. I do like that when we're looking at the fixtures here, the percentages for the underdogs are quite high. So Brighton versus Chelsea, Brighton are the underdogs because right now they're 9th. Assuming that Chelsea win Wolves, Chelsea is going to shoot up to 4th, and that would be a more than 5 league table position difference, right? So Brighton will be, in this respect, the underdogs, but they have a 38% chance to win. As we saw just now, 30 plus percentages is generally a good thing if we're targeting underdogs. And, that's one of those fixtures we could target for game week 25. The next fixture is Fulham versus Forest. Now, Fulham are currently 10th, Forest are 3rd. Forest are having a great season. But is there a chance that Fulham could win Nottingham Forest at home? They're actually 45% favorites, right? So in that respect, I do think like when I look at the fixtures right now that we can target in terms of table bonus for Gaming 25, it's looking pretty promising, right? And then there's also Crystal Palace and Everton. At this point in time, they're only separated by 4 positions on the table because Crystal Palace is 12th, Everton is 16th. It could change very drastically, obviously. But assuming that Crystal Palace goes slightly higher or if Everton drops a little bit, then that basically makes Everton the underdog by 5 positions. And if that's the case, you could very well back them to do something or get a result against Crystal Palace. But the only thing is that only 24% of a chance of a favorite for that fixture, right? So for Gaming 25, in terms of table bonus fixtures we can target, those are the ones I've highlighted in red. For Gaming 26, there also are a couple of, fixtures that we could use to target table bonus. The first one is Everton versus Manchester United. Everton are 35% favourites to win that game, and that's at home. Looking at how Manchester United are performing right now, you would not put it past Everton to get a result against United. Even a draw is 5 extra bonus points. So it's very, very good to target table bonus here. And obviously at this point in time, again, as I've said, United are 13th, Everton is 16th. Things could change. The gap could widen. There could be a 5 league position difference, and then you can go for an Everton manager in David Moyes. Further down the kind of red highlighted fixtures for Game Week 26, there's also Fulham versus Crystal Palace. In this case, Crystal Palace is the team that is the underdog. They're 29% to win, so close enough to 30%. The only issue with this fixture is that Fulham and Crystal Palace are actually quite close. So in order for this to be eligible for table bonus, and you back Crystal Palace for the table bonus team, you will need either Fulham to kind of, shoot up the table a little bit more, or Crystal Palace to drop down a little bit, simply because both of them are quite close now at 10th and 12th. But if you look at the, teams from 12 onwards, or even from 11th onwards, starting from Brentford down the line, they're actually only separated by a couple of points. So it could change drastically by the time we get to 26. Maybe Crystal Palace is more of an underdog to Fulham, and then you can back them. The last fixture is Ipswich versus Spurs. Now, this is also a fixture that I think is very decent to target because Spurs aren't performing very well right now. Ipswich, you could back them to get a result against Spurs, even though they just lost by a huge margin to Man City. But that's also because Man City are on a bit of a resurgence, I would say. Spurs right now are going in the opposite direction. And I actually do think that the Ipswich attack is a decent attack. Defensively, I think they did crumble against Manchester City. But in terms of players like Liam Delap, I fully back him to get something against that Spurs attack. And if they do maybe get an early lead, I do actually think that Ipswich could get a result. They're only a 23% favourite though. So as I've said, percentages do also matter. But if not, in terms of Game Week 25 and Game Week 26, there are table bonus fixtures that we can target, right? So these are the ones. And I think we have to compare it to, the other game weeks that potentially, if we use the assistant manager chip later down the line, what kind of fixtures would we be getting in terms of table bonus fixtures? So we've settled 25 and 26. Let's now have a look at 31 and 32 and also 37 and 38. So I'm in the middle of the screen right now, and on the left of the screen is basically 31 and 32 fixtures, and on the right of the screen is 37 and 38 fixtures. And in a similar way, I've highlighted the fixtures that I think you can try to target for table bonus. I also kind of speak out some trends that I found in terms of highlighting these fixtures. Now, firstly, for 31 and 32, let's have a look here. This would be in the event where you activate the assistant manager chip in 31 to target 31, 32, and 33. There's Brentford and Chelsea. Now, Chelsea, obviously, if they do win the Wolves game, they go pretty high up. Brentford are also 10th at the moment. You could back Brentford to get a result against Chelsea. And realistically speaking, I actually do think like Brentford are a team known to kind of give trouble to, the big teams. And they could get a result at the G-Tech against Chelsea. I think it's fully possible. So that's one of the fixtures you can target for table bonus. Palace versus Brighton is also another one. You could back Palace to get a result against Brighton. And then the third fixture I've highlighted for Game Week 31 is Manchester United versus Man City. This is the one where you likely have to back Manchester United with the form that they're at right now. Maybe you're not super comfortable with that, so you could go for the other fixtures above that I've mentioned, right? So in Game Week 32, there's also Bournemouth versus Fulham. Now, Bournemouth are pretty high right now. Fulham slightly lower than them. If the gap between these two teams does increase to 5 positions, then you could actually back Fulham to get a result against Bournemouth. And that's also very, very possible. Aside from that, down the Game Week 32 fixtures, the second one I've highlighted is Newcastle versus United, but this would largely need United to get a result against Newcastle at St. James's Park, right? So again, it's up to your own decision as to whether you think they're capable of doing that. Now, when I look at 37 and 38, this is the week where we predict many teams to be on the beach. Say, for example, if Liverpool do have the league settled already, they could field a weaker squad. Could Brighton get a result against them in 37? Maybe it's possible, right? So I should have highlighted the Brighton versus Liverpool fixture in 37 as well, but that's one of those you can target if Liverpool have the league settled. There's also Aston Villa versus Tottenham. This would require you to back Tottenham against Aston Villa. And then Chelsea versus Manchester United, you can very well back United to get a result against Chelsea. For 38, it's United versus Villa. You could back United to get a result against Villa. For Spurs versus Brighton, you'd be backing Spurs. For Wolves versus Brentford, you'd be backing Wolves. So the similar trend here is obviously you're backing the underdog, but a lot of the teams that you see come up are teams like Spurs, for example, or teams like Manchester United, teams that generally we think should be doing well enough not to be at this position that they're at right now. I think they're around 15th or 16th right now, which is pretty shocking for a club of their kind of stature, like Manchester United and Tottenham. And you actually predict them to be ending the season slightly higher, I would say. But if they were still to be at the position that they're at, you could actually back them to get a result because we know they have quality players. So you could actually back them to get a result against these teams that I've highlighted. Right, so there we go in terms of analyzing the fixtures that you can target for table bonus. It's been quite a ramble on table bonus, but I do think we need to take a look at the fixtures and really see which ones we can target. And in terms of these different pairs we've looked at, 25 and 26, 31 and 32, 37 and 38, you can also draw a bit of a preference as to which set of fixtures you prefer to target for table bonus, and then that could also help you decide when you want to use your assistant manager chip. So with all the discussion on the assistant manager chip done now, I want to zoom out a little bit and have a look at the full fixture list. Now what I have on screen is from fpl.team. It's an FPL transfer planning website. It's completely free to use. They haven't sponsored the video or anything. I just think it's a really good platform to plan your transfers on. And what they've done is they've teamed up with Planet FPL James, who is really good in terms of predicting future fixtures as well, looking at the different cups, the results, what's more likely to happen, which fixtures are, likely to slot where, and thereafter come up with a overall view of what it could potentially look like for the rest of the season. So what we have here, just a bit of a caveat, is that it probably would not happen exactly as what is shown here. You're going to see a bit of differences here and there, but I think this gives us a bit of a picture that we can go by. So now we're in Game Week 23, that's what's highlighted. In Game Week 24, there we see the double for Everton and Liverpool. Everton will obviously have Leicester and Liverpool both at home. Liverpool will have Bournemouth and Everton both away. Now, I'm going to skip all the way to Game Week 29, and this is where we see a couple of blanks here. Aston Villa will be blanking, Crystal Palace will be blanking, Liverpool will be blanking, and Newcastle will also be blanking. Now, the reason why they've kind of predicted this as such is because they do predict that Liverpool will overturn the deficit in the EFL Cup against Spurs, which would mean that Liverpool progress to the finals of the EFL Cup. And they also predict that Newcastle will hold on to that 2-0 lead that they have now against Arsenal and make it to the EFL Cup final. Essentially, what that would mean is that Newcastle and Liverpool will be involved in the final that game week, which would cause Crystal Palace and Aston Villa, who are their respective opponents for that week, to blank. So that would give us 4 teams blanking in game week 29. This is a game week we will need to be able to navigate. There's a couple of different ways we could do this. We could dead end into game week 29, basically sell all of the Aston Villa, Crystal Palace, Liverpool, and Newcastle assets that we have leading up to game week 29, so that we only have teams with fixtures, and then in game week 30 you wildcard to bring them back in. That's one of the strategies. Aside from that, there's also free hitting, so keeping all these players in your squad, not worrying about shipping them out, and then free hit in game week 29 to get out of that tricky spot, and then you have your players back in for game week 30 because your team reverts back to the original team. So that's one of the possibilities. I'm also going to fast forward now to game week 33. That is going to be a double game week for a couple of teams. And assuming that the teams that blank in game week 29 are, as we mentioned just now, then these teams would correspondingly have a double game week in game week 33. Essentially, the fixtures that they missed out on in 29 would go into 33. So there you see Aston Villa having a fixture against Liverpool. Liverpool also having an extra fixture there in 33 against Aston Villa. That double would be Leicester and Aston Villa for Liverpool. So also a very decent double that they have there. Aside from that, the Newcastle versus Crystal Palace fixture will slot in there as well. So Newcastle will have Aston Villa and Crystal Palace as the double, and Aston Villa will have Newcastle and Liverpool as their double. So not that great for Aston Villa. Aside from that, there are also other doubles that could slot in there, but I won't speak too much about them because those are, predictions that are going to hinge on other factors and it's going to get too complicated, right? But basically, game week 33 could also be double game weeks for teams that are deep into the FA Cup, and maybe some fixtures where it gets too congested in the later part of the season could be moved to game week 33 where there's a free midweek slot and they can double in that week and just, clear up the calendar a little bit. So 33 could be a double for a number of teams, but the minimum is that it would have the 2 extra fixtures that missed out in game week 29. So that's for 33. That's a double that I think in terms of, we go back to the assistant manager chip that we discussed just now, you could target this 33 by activating the assistant manager chip in 31 and then having it for 32 and 33. If not, bench boost in 33 is also a possibility. We'll talk about more chips later in the next section. I'm going to fast forward now to just the next game week, 34. There you see lots of blanks. These blanks are caused by the FA Cup, right? So the teams that are involved in the FA Cup are pretty much going to, blank this week because they will be playing the FA Cup games. This is predicted to be the biggest blank, game week 34. And it's also one of the reasons why, as I mentioned just now, you don't want to have your assistant manager chip activated for 34. Because then it would mean that you can't use other chips to get out of this spot. You can't use a free hit there, right? So it's the biggest blank. You see teams like Liverpool blanking, City blanking, United blanking, Aston Villa is also blanking, right? So again, predictions, but majority of the teams that I think we have players from are going to blank. So that's tricky to navigate. Again, different ways that we can navigate this. I would think that a chip is pretty much necessary. If not, you could try to dead end there. If not, 35 is a normal single game week. 36 is the last double game week where all the fixtures that haven't been played are going to be slot into this free midweek for game week 36. It may not be as big as 33, or it could be the other way around where 36 is bigger and 33 could be smaller. The size of the double game weeks in comparison, right, 33 and 36, it's not certain. Ben Crellin is just not certain as to which will be bigger or smaller. Basically, 36 will also be a double for a number of teams, and then 37 and 38 are normal game weeks. So I've went on a bit of a rant here. Hopefully it was clear enough. If not, you could slow my speed down and then replay this section. I've sped through a little bit, but I wanted to just give a big picture of the game weeks moving forward before we have a look at the chip strategy. So long story short, game week 24 double game week, game week 29 blank game week, game week 33, double game week 34, blank, game week, the biggest blank, bigger than 29. And then 36 is the final double game week of the season. And then 37, 38 is just single game week. So that's the big picture view. And let's now have a look at some recommended chip strategies. So with all of that out of the way, we can finally take a look at some chip strategy. So before we go into the different combinations, I wanted to break it down in terms of each chip. So on the left hand side of the screen, you see the wildcard, the assistant manager, the bench boost, the free hit, and the triple captain. So we'll start off with the wildcard first. I think there are two main windows that you could use it. Obviously, team dependent, right? If you need it in different game weeks where, say, you have a lot of red flags, lots of injuries, you could be pushed to use it. And then obviously, if it makes sense for you, go ahead. But if your team is fine, you can hold it until these recommended game weeks. That works as well. Game week 30, I imagine, is going to be a very popular wildcard week because by game week 30, you would have a very good idea of the future blanks and doubles. Some of them are going to be confirmed. Some will also have a better prediction of whether it's going to slot into 33 or 36. Basically, you have a very clear picture and you can plan very well. Also, it allows you to dead end your team into game week 29 and then wildcard in 30 to get out of that spot. Right, so game week 30 is going to be a popular one. 35 is also popular because I do think like if you want to bench boost in 36, that is a possible strategy. You can wildcard just before you use the bench boost. I'll elaborate more on that later on. In terms of the assistant manager chip, there are obviously the three main windows that we discussed at the start of the video: double game week 24, single game week 31, and double game week 36. As for the bench boost, it's definitely going to be a double game week recommendation from me. So double game week 33 or double game week 36. It's essentially whichever game week that you're not using the assistant manager chip, right? And then there's free hit. Free hit again, I think there's different ways you can integrate the free hit chip. Last season, it worked out very well for people who used the free hit in a double game week, and that made sense. But I think for this season, it's going to make more sense that in double game weeks, you use either the bench boost or the assistant manager chip. Last season, there was much more doubles, much more blanks as well. There was more chaos that opened up the possibility for a free hit in a double game week. But this season, the double game weeks are saved for the bench boost and the assistant manager. So I'm not going to deviate too much from that. I'm going to say that free hit wise, I'm probably going to recommend either blank game week 29, blank game week 34, or saving it till all the way to the end of the season where potentially, as I've mentioned, teams could be on the beach. You could want to remove those players for players that actually have something to play for, right? So three main game weeks that we're looking at for the free hit. And lastly, the triple captain chip. For this chip, I'm only going to say double game week 24 because as I've said in the earlier sections, I think the chips that we talked about earlier need to be saved for game week 30 onwards. So the triple captain chip, if I still had it, I would use it in double game week 24, but that essentially would mean that you can't assistant manager in game week 24. Right, so with this context here, I'm going to recommend two main strategies and then I'm going to tell you guys which one I'm leaning towards. But both of these strategies below, as you see in this kind of underlined section here, do not require saving money for the assistant manager chip when you wildcard. Now, as I've mentioned at the start of the video, I think it's very, very crucial to manage your money, and I don't want to be in a position, or at least if I could avoid it, I don't want to be in a spot where I have to wildcard and also, keep 1.5 million aside so that when I use the assistant manager chip, I have enough money for that. I don't want to find myself in that spot for now. So that's why I'm recommending the two strategies below. So the first one is to use the assistant manager in game week 24, wildcard in game week 30, which essentially means that you dead end to game week 29, and then you bench boost in either one of 33 or 36, whichever is the bigger double, which by the time you wildcard in 30, you would have a bigger or a clearer picture. And then you free hit in game week 34 to navigate that big blank game week of the season. The benefits surrounding these is you firstly get the assistant manager chip out of the way. Benefits of that I've elaborated at the start of the video. An earlier wildcard than the strategy below it, which is a wildcard 35, essentially means that you don't have to use free transfers for so long. You can just use your free transfers to get you up till game week 30, and then you reset your team again. So you have the wild card earlier to plan for the rest of the season. I think the last point here, I've put it in here to kind of contradict a little bit as to save the assistant manager in 24 and use it in whichever of the double that you are not bench boosting. That could work. But it, again, means that you need to save money for the assistant manager when you wildcard. So I've put this point here, not so much as a benefit, but more of a permutation of this strategy. But my preference is to assistant manager in game week 24 if you're going with a strategy like that. Now, the next recommendation that I have is a free hit in 29. So this is to navigate that smaller blank that, as we mentioned just now, teams like Newcastle, Liverpool, Aston Villa, and Crystal Palace are likely to blank. You free hit to get out of that spot, but that essentially means that you don't have to wildcard so soon. You're not dead-ending your team. You can just free hit, get out of that spot, then you assistant manager in 31. Now, why you assistant manager in 31 is because you want to save the next double, which is 36, for your bench boost. Right? So you assistant manager in 31 to have it in 31, 32, and then your double game week 33. Then you navigate game week 34 by dead-ending your team into 34, and then wildcarding out of it, which is wildcard 35, and then you bench boost in 36. So immediately after you wildcard, you get to bench boost. That's a huge benefit for this strategy. And since blank game week 29 is a small blank, there is also a potential that you could be in a spot where maybe you don't need to free hit in 29. Maybe there's some flexibility to save the free hit and use it in 38 instead, right? So that's one of the good things about this strategy. And I think lastly, I just want to discuss the converse, viewpoint of this second strategy here. And it is that you have to use free transfers all the way up to you wildcard in 35 to deal with, injuries that you have or maybe fixture swings that may come along the way. You will have to use free transfers to navigate that because you're only going to use the wildcard in 35, which also means that there's only a remaining 3 game weeks, 36, 37, and 38 for your wildcard to pay off. Right? So all this said and done, for the time being, what is the strategy that I'm likely going to go with? I'm probably going to go with assistant manager 24, wildcard 30, bench boost whichever is bigger of 33/36, and then free hit in 34. For now, this is my strategy. So yes, at this point of recording, I'm probably going to activate my assistant manager chip in game week 24. Right, so there we go. I hope this video, even though it was a bit of a ramble at different points in time, and I think by the time you're watching this section here, it might even be 30-40 minutes already. I do apologize if I ramble a little bit, but I hope it was clear enough and useful for you guys. If you have any questions at all, feel free to drop it in the chat down below. And again, these are only, from my perspective. I'm very open to what you guys have to say as well. Your own interpretations of the fixtures, predicted doubles, predicted blanks, when is the best time to use different chips. Let me know in the comments down below if I've missed out anything. Let's have a bit of a discussion down there. I love interacting with you guys as always. And if you enjoyed this one, please do drop a like. Please do subscribe as well if you found some use in today's video. And I will catch you guys in more Game Week 23 content coming very, very soon. Bye-bye.